Whether it's biryani or sushi, paella or curry, half the world runs on rice. But rice is also in trouble. The global flow of this crop keeps billions of people fed, but disruptions like climate change, war, and inflation can have big consequences. West African countries like Senegal that import most of their rice are especially vulnerable.
Il faut qu'on arrive vraiment à cultiver du riz suffisant pour nourrir notre population.
So they've taken up a Senegal-first rice strategy, ramping up their own production in unconventional ways. Can it work?
On a besoin de poissons, de riz, de légumes de notre choix.
This is thieboudienne, Senegal's national dish. Local legend has it that this one-pot meal was invented by a cook in the 19th century at the governor's residence during French colonial rule.
Donc, juste quelques minutes, ça commence à bouillir, on va précuire le riz dessus, vous allez voir.
Whether it's in a five-star hotel or a roadside eatery, with tomatoes or without, rice is the main attraction of this dish. And it packs a punch.
Hot, already hot. Oh. Oh. That's spicy.
Yeah, il a vu trop de piment.
It's good. Oh. Water. Oh.
Mexican.
You are not Chinese. Chinese like spicy.
Yeah. The average Senegalese eats around 85 kilos of rice per year, and a growing population means the country needs more rice than ever.
When you're here in Dakar's biggest market, it's like a 9-course meal of sensory overload. You've got dried fish, fresh fish, meat, veggies, spices, but all of this pales in comparison to rice.
And about 2/3 of this, according to the most recent data, is imported. The country's lack of domestic rice production has its roots in colonialism. French rulers made farmers across West Africa grow lucrative cash crops like groundnuts as opposed to the food they eat, forcing them to source things like rice from other colonies in Southeast Asia. This has created serious problems in the last few decades. These are protests against rising food prices in 2008. They were sparked when India, Senegal's biggest source of rice imports, decided to ban exports because of rising food prices in its own market. Things cooled down when global rice prices fell, and India turned the rice tap back on. But new problems are brewing again. Since 2022, India has banned several rice exports because of extreme weather, the war in Ukraine, and inflation. That includes broken rice, the mainstay of thieboudienne.
This is basically fragments of rice that were broken during harvest, drying, transport, and it's basically the cheapest kind of rice that's available on the world market today.
This time around, Senegal has a stronger domestic reserve. Its irrigated rice fields in the country's north have ramped up production in recent years.
The dog, you see?
But Abdoulaye Sai thinks it's not enough. We're on our way to the Fatick region of the country, where Sai has been laser-focused on boosting the production of these rice farms. They rely entirely on rain to nourish their crops, but that is becoming increasingly unpredictable. And they tend to be run by small-scale farmers who struggle with getting credit to deal with upfront costs. He's betting that a method of cultivation called System of Rice Intensification, or SRI, is the answer.
On a vu des parcelles de Eziri là-bas. Ça nous a tellement impressionné qu'au retour, on est venu dans la zone pluviale.
SRI is less about money or complex machinery and more about changing farming habits, using younger and fewer seeds, spacing them out evenly when planting, weeding frequently, and controlling water use, which advocates say would be a lifesaver for millions of farmers with small plots of land and few resources. That's why SRI has been trialed in dozens of countries in Asia and Africa, including southern Senegal.
Salam alaikum.
Maaleykum salam.
Comment allez-vous?
Ça va bien. Et vous?
Ça va, ça va, ça va, ça va.
What are we seeing here?
Ce qu'on voit ici, c'est du riz récolté, qui a été récolté avec la pratique SRI.
Instead of keeping rice paddies constantly flooded, as conventional farming calls for, SRI encourages drying out, then flooding rice fields again.
Avec le SRI, on a le minimum d'eau, en tout cas pour avoir un bon résultat. Déjà, le SRI a besoin d'un développement du système racinaire très important. Donc, à un certain moment, il faut assécher. Donc, il faut diminuer complètement l'eau.
The water-saving measure reduces methane emissions in these fields by as much as 60%. A big deal considering global rice production is responsible for about 10% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions. But the big sell for farmers here is being able to keep production up while using far fewer seeds.
Les semences, on en utilise beaucoup. Un hectare, il faut souvent 100 kg. Donc, on est allé à réduire. Avec le SRI, ce qui est sûr et certain, dans les 10-15 kilos, vous avez l'hectare.
One trial here in Fatick showed that SRI doubled rice production compared to conventional methods. And in 2021, Senegal, along with other West African countries, received millions of dollars from an organization called the Adaptation Fund to scale it up further.
C'est formidable pour le thieboudienne, parce que c'est du riz aromatique. Vraiment, vous n'allez plus retourner, ça c'est sûr et certain.
Despite its successes, the biggest hurdle is that almost all SRI farming has to be done manually.
Pour un hectare, je t'assure, il faut beaucoup de personnes, beaucoup de main-d'œuvre pour le pays de piquer ça. Ça demande beaucoup d'argent.
For this reason, Sai says only about a third of farmers they train up through his program end up sticking with SRI methods. And many fields still need barriers like these that keep rainwater in and salt water out.
Mais avec les eaux là, ça ruisselle et ça va en mer. Donc il n'y avait pas d'ouvrage. Deuxièmement, il y avait l'entrée de la langue salée. Donc toutes les terres ont été occupées par le sel. Très salé, on ne pouvait plus rien faire.
Scaling up rice production, SRI or not, could add to a problem that sub-Saharan Africa is already facing, and that's malaria. Experts are just starting to understand the connection.
The instructions for growing rice and for growing malaria mosquitoes in Africa, they are identical. The water has to be shallow, sunlit, mostly still but not completely stagnant.
Research has shown that rice cultivating villages have twice the level of malaria compared to non-rice cultivating ones. And SRI practices, like draining a rice field, allows mosquitoes to breed faster. One preliminary trial in Tanzania suggests that SRI rice fields contain double the amount of mosquitoes compared to conventionally farmed rice paddies.
We need to be careful not to present this as a trade-off. We need a win-win-win solution which will get those farmers more rice and less methane and less mosquitoes.
Back in the urban sprawl of Dakar, a roadside eatery is packed with a lunchtime crowd stopping for thieboudienne and mafe, a peanut stew that's served with rice. Many of them still aren't sold on the homegrown variety.
Le riz local, il est bien, mais personnellement, nous on utilise plus le riz importé. Parce qu'il y en a qui disent que c'est de meilleure qualité. Quand j'utilise le riz local là, c'est un peu difficile à cuisiner par rapport au riz exporté.
For years, domestic rice has been harder to get and perceived as lower quality when occasional stones can be found in its grains. But that's slowly changing.
Comme les terrales, bon, ils sont 4 qualités de riz, mais toujours le riz est propre, parce qu'il y a des riz qui passent par la lagère. Et dès qu'on fait, on peut passer par la lagère, donc il y a plus de pierres, il y a plus aussi le riz qui n'est pas propre.
Aujourd'hui, c'est ça le défi, de faire en sorte que dans toutes les parcelles au Sénégal, que ce soit la grande majorité, pratique le SRI, parce que ça permet d'aller plus vite dans l'autosuffisance en riz.
Sañoon ceebu mbay bi daan toog ay di ségrégation dañu fexe defaral ñu ceebu mbay fii la ñu dëkk suñu ceeb la ñu bëgg.
Hey, thanks so much for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, give it a like and subscribe to our channel. And if you want to watch more videos in the Rerooted series, just click right here.